Good morning, everyone. So, today we are going to cover the leadership lessons as a part of the strategies for professional growth. In this module, we'll all get to see how one can lead themselves from within, how leading oneself before leading others is a vital thing. We all lead, and how to lead others by leading oneself. So, these are the three broad topics that we are going to cover. Finally, the commonality in all of these is it's about leading oneself. It starts with us. So, just a overview of it, of the three topics. What are the non-negotiable core values? What are our spheres of responsibility? How do we exercise the power of choice? How do we take responsibility and ownership for ourselves? How to stay to our potential and invest in ourselves?
I must mention here that this leading yourself from within is something very relevant and important for every leader at various stages in the hierarchy. And among these that have been listed, I feel this taking responsibility and ownership for yourself is something that stands out very clearly.
In addition, Colonel, when we point to others to do something, we are actually pointing more fingers at us. So, in a way, leading is something where we start. It has to start with us, right? So, once it starts with us, and we are prepared, then leader is in a way born, right?
Great example and analogy.
And the other beauty is when you lead, you already have an example in you, so it becomes easy for you to uh, pass on whatever qualities that you are able to exhibit
Yeah.
among others.
I would say lead yourself from within. It's not, you don't try to become a leader. So, first express yourself totally and become yourself. The becoming of yourself will is the journey that will take you to becoming a total and complete leader. So, it is about understanding ourselves and expressing ourselves, our total self expression. In the process we become leaders, because when we lead ourselves is when we'll be able to lead others, because you can only take lead others as far as you have led yourself. And the last one about leading others to lead themselves: true leaders create more leaders, not followers. So it's really important to remember that in today's world, that leaders create more leaders.
So, one more thing that I wanted to add here is when you do this, leading yourselves from within, you also create the empathy, being sensitive what the other people feel, right? That's one of the core things that happen when you start from within.
That's beautifully stated, Shiva. In addition, what Prasanna stated, that's a commonly misunderstood thing. Leaders means followers. No, leaders create leaders. I would like to underline that. True leaders inspire others to become leaders. And by doing that, they earn followers. You don't try to earn followers. You inspire others. You try to build leadership in others, and thereby people automatically get inspired and you may end up getting followers. So there is a big distinction there.
Some of the challenges we face is when somebody is doing something, we tend to go and correct them, etc., etc., right? When that happens, uh, we are not able to create leaders in themselves. We are becoming better at it. So there is that trust that is very important when it comes to a leader, right? That the other person will take the responsibility, will be correcting himself or herself, is one thing. So this micromanaging does not help in terms of either being a leader or building leaders.
Zero error syndrome, where people people tend to expect their subordinates to give them a perfect result without any error at all. And as a result, what happens is they do not delegate tasks. Even if they delegate, they keep interfering when they're doing things. Similarly, the other point is we have to empower our subordinates. See, we often give responsibilities to them without the required resources. So it is important that the responsibility is given to people with some authority. Unless that is understood and executed properly, this challenge will continue to be there. And one more thing I would like to add here is about the roles and responsibilities of everybody within the team. It is the leader's prerogative or responsibility, in fact, to ensure that there is no role stepping on to somebody else's toes, or there is, even if there is some role which is common to people, there has to be that understanding created between these two employees.
Many times, what happens is in your personal life, you may have some difficulty, and that would affect you in the professional life, right? So, as a leader, we have seen over and over that the leaders are able to manage whatever happens in the personal life, are able to manage to do well in the professional life, and vice versa. Taking one to the other and vice versa has been something that leaders have exhibited their leadership skill in that.
Not being able to face criticism or work on criticism or feedback is one of the bigger challenges that we face. And also, it's just also communication skills, not effective communication and listening skills. All these are some of the common leadership challenges that we experience in life. So, going ahead, we're going to share some strategies and lessons that would help cover and address some of these challenges and how best we can address them. So, the first part of leadership lessons is lead yourself from within. Before you lead others, it's important to lead yourself. So, we'll start with lead yourself from within. And the first leadership lesson is on upholding your core values. Values represent what is most important to you, what you value most, and what is meaningful to you in your life. They are principles, ideals, and standards of behavior. They are an inner honor code that inspires personal internal commitment even when nobody is watching. Values influence your actions, your behaviors, your attitudes and decisions and choices in life. The totality of your self-expression. When you're confused or feeling lost, values, your core values, serve as a guiding compass. Values help you to be true to yourself, be your real, authentic self. Values thus ultimately define happiness, fulfillment, and success in life. Every individual has a different set of values based on their life experiences, their family background, the environment that they have grown up in, and or what they want from life. Some of these values form your core values, values that are non negotiable, values that inspire you to do what is right and not what is easy. Colonel, you have been with the armed forces. Now, what are three core values that have served you as your guiding compass in difficult situations?
Okay, I'll limit my core values to three. Since you mentioned three, what comes on the top of everything to me is honesty. That was my first point, and I have been so far very honest to myself and to people with whom I have dealt with. I feel honesty is like pregnancy. Either you are pregnant or you are not pregnant. You cannot be, I am a little bit pregnant and I am a little bit not pregnant. So there are no shades of gray in honesty. You are either honest or you are not honest. That is my first issue. Um, and after that, the second point I would think of is adaptability. Although it is a very difficult proposition to adapt ourselves into any kind of situation, the nature of our job in the armed forces is that we perforce have to adapt to the environment, whether physically or mentally. You're posted in a desert area, I have to adapt to the desert conditions. You're posted in high altitude terrain, you're supposed to acclimatize and adapt yourself to that kind of a life. In fact, there are places where there are no other living beings on earth except Indian soldiers and some Pakistani soldiers. So, such places we are supposed to be guarding our frontiers. There is no choice. You adapt yourself. And in the process, what has happened is I have been able to adapt myself into, I mean, wherever I go. The best adaptation was my transition from uniform into CVs. That is, when I joined IIT Madras, there are a few of my people who worked with me who know the challenge that I faced for adapting into this culture outside, whatever they are. And lastly, is being responsible for not just myself but my command. When I say my command, we in the forces, as a young officer who passes out of the academy, he is responsible for 30 men and women under him, soldiers. Similarly, as you rise, what happens is there is a point where you are directly responsible for about 800 to 1000 jawans, and at such times, what happens is taking ownership and responsibility becomes very, very important. It is a second nature, and there are various examples, uh, instances where things have gone wrong, and I had to, when things go wrong, I go forward because I am the one who ordered, and in the execution part, something goes wrong down below in the hierarchy. I cannot say you go and face the music there. That will not be in the right spirit. Therefore, very in Kargil, what I remember was somewhere in 98, 99, we were having a course shooting. Shooting means we fire the artillery guns. It is called practice range, where the shells and bombs fall. Uh, it's just a practice between the observer and the guns. The observer is about 10, 12 kilometers away, and the guns are so much far behind. In the process, what happened once was there is a hill crest. Right now, if you go to Kargil today, it is a airfield, the place that I am now talking of. That that contour, the skyline, which forms the hilltop, somewhere in the top of the target, top of the hill was the target that was given to one observer. And this observer's job was to bring the fire onto the top. Now, the procedure is this fellow gives the latitude, longitude, reads the map, height, and all that. The first round comes, it goes down below. He says left or right, 100, 200 yards, depending on the binocular degree that he watches. And then he adds something. He said, add 800. When the observer said add 800, there is one fellow working on safety. Because if the ground goes over, there was a chance, likelihood of this shell going over the hillock and falling outside. That could be a loss to civilian property, including lives. Now, this is training. Somebody has to take responsibility and overrule the safety cry. The safety fellow said, stopped by safety, drop 400, meaning he said, add 800. Safety says, no, I am stopping this. Please drop it by 400, bring it down. Otherwise, there may be a problem. But then I was the OIC, officer in charge of that core shooting practice, and I said, I am responsible, fire 800. So we have a different lingo for that. I said, so and so responsible and all that, and fire 800. So the round went, nothing happened. And after that, I think people were also happy. Okay, nothing happened. The whole thing finished. We started at 8 and finished at 12 o'clock, wound up. When I was entering my mess for having lunch, there was a message for me to go and meet the collector because some locals have come and collected themselves in front of collector's office. There were 3 rounds in a village across the thing. And therefore, no lunch for me that day. I went there, met these people. Luckily there wasn't much of a damage, and partly these fellows were not supposed to be there, and that became an advantage for us. Our sentries were useful that time. The red flags were there, and despite the red flag, there were some folks who were walking in, and that's how that hue and cry was created. So, what I'm saying is, if you are honest to yourself in terms of knowing what is your job, your boundaries, and you stand by your subordinates in whatever they have done, because they have done everything in good faith, I don't think there will be any problem. Thank you.
Often, what happens is one of the core values that I observe is no corruption and no bribing. Now, we often think corruption or bribing has to do with money exchange. Not really. Let's say I'm a teacher, my job is to teach, and if I slip in that, if I don't do that properly, then I am corrupt. So, corruption has nothing to do with only money exchange. So, that's something that we don't understand. So, the core value, as somebody put it, you have to define the core value properly. That's important.
The second leadership lesson under Lead Yourself from Within is know your spheres of responsibility. What is a sphere of responsibility and why must you know that? The spheres of responsibility empowers you to take charge of and take responsibility for those things that are within your control, that you can do something about at any moment of time. Knowing what is within your control and what is outside of your control helps you focus and create maximum impact in your life. It saves you tons of energy, time, and mind space that you would have otherwise spent on trying to change stuff or things that you had no responsibility and control over. Stephen Covey, in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, says that when you focus on your sphere of control and responsibility, it in fact expands your sphere of impact. Karthik, what are some of your insights on this?
It's extremely important and for us to be aware what really is in our control, what we can influence, and what we can be concerned about. Too often we get mixed up about the whole thing, and I have reflected. I do make mistakes, but I do reflect also to realize. For example, if we spend our today in today's world, there is so much of social media, there's so much of news, which is actually not very healthy news. Also, it's not inspiring news. It's just it just consumes our time. We just don't know For example, we may be talking about some war going on, some political party making some statement, and spend endless hours during the day debating on WhatsApp or on chat. But can we do anything about it constructively? No. We are ordinary citizens, right? We don't have any influence on world politics, war, economy, etc. That comes under the sphere of concern or interest, which is important, but just let's set that aside. What is really a worthwhile way of spending our time, which is completely in our control, is, am I taking care of my body, mind, food? Am I exercising? Am I enriching myself with learning every day, learning relevant things both to my professional work as well as things that are of importance, right, for character building, habit maintenance, etc. Because these are, finally, we in the beginning of the session we talked about personal leadership. Everything starts with us. So are we doing things that nourishes us, which is within our control? So managing our time. Time is one of the most precious assets. People typically measure somebody's worth in today's world with the money they have. I would say time is the most precious asset that we have all been gifted. How we use our time is the and how we use our energy. We are all having limited energy. When we wake up fresh. We have about 12 hours of productive energy and time. How we use that is completely in our control. And where we choose to focus, where we give our mind time to, these are areas that are under our control. And if we use them constructively, then we become better leaders ourselves. Okay. The second is sphere of influence. There is this society that we are closely connected with, the close circle, I would say. It could be students if you are a faculty, it could be family, friends who are within our immediate circle. If we find that we can be of some service, if something is not going right, we don't like something of what they're doing, or we would wish them to be different, we cannot control them, however close they may be to us. But we have a significant role to influence, guide them, direct them. But there stops our influence. I mean, it's not a control. Unlike personal habits, where it's completely in our control, this is just a sphere of influence. We wish well for them, we guide them, we talk to them, and direct them. So there is a partial influence and a little better than ourselves, but it stops at that. So I would say, starting from the core, sphere of control is how we use our time, energy, and mind space. That's where we have control over. If we spend a lot more, we need to spend the highest amount of time there. To a certain extent, we need to spend on our near and dear family, friends, peers, the ecosystem with which we surround ourselves in our professional world. And the least amount of time, if possible, with the external world. Not that we should not be aware of news, not that we should not be aware of economy and weather and things like that. But if we overinvest our time where we are going to have the least results, it's going to be detrimental to us.
Just want to add a couple of points here. One of the attitudes that I see among students, of course, it expands to not just students but many others, is we have this attitude of tell me what to do, right? Tell me what to do means you have handed over the control of your own self to somebody else, right? Why can't I just shift it to asking, I'm doing this, do you think it's okay? Right? Which means that now the control is with you, right? We call this as proactiveness. Very few exhibit this kind of proactiveness, and everyone who has been proactive, I've seen them to become leaders of tomorrow. That's one thing that I wanted to mention. The other is personally, when I started this habit of intermittent fasting. Over time, the changes happened that people could see, and therefore when I went to them and said it is possible for you to shed off weight, or it is possible for you to have more energy during the day, they bought it. Why did they buy it? It was because that first it started with me, and therefore now when I said that, it gave more power to me. Like what Prasanna said, the sphere of influence happened because of that.
I just couldn't avoid chipping in one bit based on what Prasanna and Shiva said. She talked about Stephen Covey in the context of control and influence, and Shiva added proactiveness. Be proactive is the first habit that Stephen Covey mentions in his 7 habits. So, as just as an add-on, I would strongly recommend that you go through that 7 habits and his book. It'll be very, very immensely powerful. Had the good fortune of reading it in my first year of my uh, when I joined my first job, and it is still one of the best books applicable for all times. The 7 habits of highly effective people. As we all know, we are all big fans of iPhone, and the founder Steve Jobs is very well known. And he says typically the mindset used to be, I will understand the customer requirements and then design products for them. Going back to Shiva's example, Steve Jobs said, I know what is good for the customer, not just good, what is the best for the customer. And that's how iPhone evolved.
The third leadership lesson under Lead Yourself from Within is exercise your power of choice. Charles Duhigg, in his book Smarter, Faster, Better, says to teach ourselves to self motivate more easily, we need to learn to see our choices not just as expressions of control but also as affirmations of our values and goals. Tapaswini, how does it help knowing that you have the power of choice in life? When you have the power of choice, when you know that you have the power of choice, and when you choose for yourself, it gives you the feeling that you're being the best. You're being your the best version of yourself. It'll help you uh, in having a peaceful and satisfying life, because every decision that you make is your own choice, but not something that is being forced upon you. And looking at the examples, yeah, as you said, we always have a choice to say yes or no in any situation. And I want to share my example where I was part of a sports team, and there was a time where I was not doing well. The power of choice also gives you a responsibility, because you are in charge, and it has consequences. Like the choice you make has consequences, so it gives you a responsibility. And also it is important that you have the choice to seek support and help when you are not able to make a choice, or when you're not able to go ahead. It is always okay to choose to seek support. And also, so I want to share one of my experience of where I had to exercise the power of choice. I was part of a inter-IIT volleyball team, but throughout the semester during the practice, I was going through having insomnia, but I somehow kept going. But when the final camp time came, I had to make a choice where should I go ahead and finally be part of the team, or should I drop. Then it was really difficult because inter is a dream for everyone. But then I made a choice thinking that, okay, if I go ahead, it is not just going to affect me but the entire team, because if I'm not able to maintain my health, if I'm not having proper sleep schedule, then it is definitely going to affect each and every member of the team, whether knowingly or unknowingly. So then I chose to not go ahead,
and made the decision, okay, I'm going to quit the team and I'm going to first fix my routine and fix my sleep cycle, then I'll be able to do better. As we've already seen that we all make choices according to our own core values. So here I was thinking that it is important for me to be honest about what is happening with me. Like, I have to be honest that I am not doing well, and I have to accept that, and I also have to accept that it is going to affect others because of my inability to perform well is going to affect the entire team. So I had to be honest about it to myself and to the entire team, that I'm not doing well, and I think it is not good that I should be part of the team.
Shiva, you have played many leadership roles in the institute. When you were the dean of students, there must have been situations when it was challenging to make the right choice, right? How did you handle such situations?
There are many occasions where I had to use the power of choice, um, and decision making was very important. What I do usually is I go back to the core values that have to be there in terms of student conduct, etc., etc. I'll give one example of a choreo team which was going to participate in a competition, and they were very good. They were going to win, definitely. But there was one member in the team who should not be participating because of certain corrective measure that the person had to go through. But the choreo team was going to lose if that person were not there. So they came to me and started to trying to convince me that inclusion of that person will win us the gold. So there was a choice that I had to make. So when that happened, I went back to the core values and said, discipline is more important, conduct is more important than winning, and therefore I stuck to the decision of saying no to that student. It was difficult because they were all upset because of this decision. But in the end, I felt I did this because the core values had to be maintained. Later on, after the event was over, the students actually came back and said, we understand what you said. So it takes some courage to say no. Many times it also is difficult for you to say no. Being assertive is one thing, but in the assertion, there is also this, because my core value also has been um, people in the front, right? And I didn't want them to feel bad about something unnecessarily. So in this case, of course, I talked to them. I told them the reason why I was saying no, etc., etc. But the fact of the matter is, the other core value also came into picture. Right? So many times, what we do is, instead of saying no, we reason it out to a certain extent so that the other person understands that the answer has to be no.
The fourth leadership lesson under Lead Yourself from Within is take responsibility and ownership for yourself. Dennis Waitley says that there are two primary choices in life: to accept conditions as they are, or accept the responsibility for changing them. End of the day, there is no right choice or wrong choice, and there's no one choice that works for all. No two lives are the same, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't consider advice or suggestions or opinions of family and friends or experts. What happens when you take total responsibility for your choices and decisions? It means that you stop playing the victim. You take ownership for your life. It means that once you've made a choice, you take responsibility for your choice and you don't blame anyone for it, including yourself. If the choice is not working for you, then explore choices, explore possibilities, explore your choices, and just go make another choice if you're unhappy with your current choice. When you take responsibility, when you take ownership for your life and for your choices, you stop playing the blame game. You don't play the blame game or wait for someone outside the world outside to come fix it. You take the initiative and go fix it yourself, or you seek the help. You take the initiative and go fix it yourself, or you seek help if you need it. You build a support system, because seeking help and having a support system is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. We tend to drain our energy, time, and resources by not really seeking out and reaching out for help and support when we really need it. Aniruddha, I remember you once shared an experience wherein you had to make a difficult choice and you made that difficult choice and you took responsibility for choice. Please share that experience with us. Colonel, a while ago, you said taking responsibility was one of your core values. Could you please share an experience about that? Could you please share an experience regarding that?
Yeah, I personally haven't been in a lot of situations where I could be a leader, but taking ownership is not something I'm stranger to, and I have taken a lot of decisions for on my own behalf. So, given examples similar to what Tapaswini said, I also had a decision whether to choose inter-IT sports over my academics in my second year of college life. There I had to make a difficult decision because it was affecting my academics heavily. So yeah, I took advantage of some counseling, and the way I was counseled was I had to make my own decision. The counselor would not make the decision for me. So the method he used was to make me think about what are the pros and cons of taking either the action or inaction, or taking the either choice, and made me clear on what I should do, and in a way that made me own my choice. So, as I've also seen my captains in the swimming team taking ownership of themselves, they go about this by being creative and not being reactive. Meaning, reactive is a situation where they react to external situations, uh, but being creative is when they themselves define how the situations are shaped. The other thing they particularly exhibit is the calm and coolness. Even though we ourselves know how hectic college life might be, on the pool with the team, everyone is shows a calm and cool, and that's what makes a good leader, in my opinion. Yeah, both internally and out, because it's a situation we are very familiar with. So the other point I would like to add is collaboration. So a leader by alone cannot do anything. So when we collaborate and make a win-win situation for everyone, that's way more productive than when we limit ourselves to within and compete with others. For example, when in my sport we don't have a coach, the reason is because our seniors itself teach the juniors. So that is a prime example of collaboration, uh, in the essence that seniors, there's a cycle that the seniors teach the juniors, and when the juniors become seniors, the cycle carries on. So the juniors take experience from the seniors. So the prime example of collaboration was in my swimming team, where we don't have coaches and the seniors are responsible for teaching the juniors. In this way, the seniors become better at what they do. The juniors take up new experiences, and they themselves become good, so that they can teach the juniors when they become. This is a win-win situation for everyone, and all around this creates a team bonding, which is good all around. A good leader is also responsible for exploring opportunities and being resourceful. So, as in, yeah. So, exploring responsibilities, as in, there are a lot of choices all around for a leader to make. He has to make the decision which possibilities to take, and not be reactive, as in, he has to accept whatever situation he is. He has to make his own decision.
So there is a beautiful quote. I don't know who said it. God, please give me the strength to understand what I can change, uh, power to accept what I cannot, and the wisdom to know the difference. So this is extremely important to distinguish what what conditions we can influence or change and act upon them once we realize that. And it is better to let go things we cannot control or change, and we need the wisdom to do. We should.
See, in responsibility, there is this word hidden, which is response, right? Now, it doesn't say reactability, it says responsibility. Responsibility has given you the power to respond in the way that suits, right? And therefore, responsibility is the key word that brings in the value, right? It also helps you in terms of leading something. Many times, when this happens, when you're reactive, you actually lose out, because you have just spoken something which cannot be, which is already spilt, it cannot be taken back. So when you are responsible and when you choose your response, it helps in the situation called win-win.
The fifth leadership lesson under Lead Yourself from Within is play to your full potential. All of us have immense potential within us. Playing to your full potential and putting in your 100% into whatever you do is immensely satisfying and fulfilling. And typically, all of us have our own strengths and weaknesses, and we tend to play to our strengths. There's a flip side to this. Strengths have downsides, and weaknesses have upsides. Siddharth, have you ever recognized a downside of any of your strengths?
Learning to lead within oneself involves learning how to play every strength of yours to your full potential. This is especially applicable in a team that has a diverse set of people with varied skill sets. So you have to learn to recognize each person's individual strengths and what their weaknesses are, and arrange them in such a way that all of them complement each other in a synergy. So one example that I would like to share where I played the entire team to each of their full potential is when I headed the inter-IIT case study contingent. So we have the entire team consists of people from the junior undergraduate to postgraduate students, and each of them has their own fields of expertise. Someone is extremely good at presentations, someone is extremely good at operations, and the only way you can ensure that the entire team agrees with each other and how finally as a team we put forth our best case study solution is when you let each of them play to their strengths. What the undergraduates are good at, you make them express that, and what the postgraduates are good at, you make them do their analysis. So in that way, instead of you dictating what they have to do, if you ask them what they would like to do and ensure that they do what they are good at, in a sense it will result in the best outcome possible. And in the process they will learn what they have to learn as well from someone else, because they're closely interacting with each other in the closely knit team. They will learn to understand what they are lacking and how they can improve for future things. And then there is a flip side to every strength as well. Like J.K. Rowling said in her iconic speech, The Success of Failure, there is a weakness to every strength and a strength to every weakness. One such thing from personal experience, I would say, is being an extrovert. As Professor Shiva and Prasanna ma'am, all of them have said, being proactive, being an extrovert gives you that confidence to go out, be seen, and do a lot of things that you wouldn't be able to do, explore new fields, and just become better as a leader. But it has its own flip side. Sometimes you tend to forget or tend to overlook the details that someone else is telling. You probably may not listen to the finer details of someone else, or you might miss out those details. Whereas being an introvert, though it has its own challenges, your ability to listen to others and comprehend in the back end what is happening, that is probably a strength of such a weakness. So in such a way, each strength has its own downside and each weakness has its own strength. So remember that your potential is unlimited. It's your choice how you want it to manifest into something tangible, and be open to learning and growing.
So, to share something similar to what Siddhartha just shared, there was a time when I was an introvert, and I probably still am. And I also had this massive fear speaking in public. In meetings, I would be quietly admiring the people who articulated and spoke well. Unknowingly, I cultivated active listening, which, when coupled with strong analytical skills that we hone at IIT, helped me grasp the big picture, connect the dots, uh, and which really helped me in designing solutions. I didn't realize this until a few seniors pointed this out to me. While it is important to play to your strengths and not try too hard to convert your weaknesses into strengths, it's important to be open to learning and growth. You never know what strengths and skills you will build in the process. So it's good to be aware of your strengths, be aware of your weaknesses, but don't get too attached to either of them. But just be open to learning and growing so that you can express your potential to the fullest. The sixth leadership lesson under Lead Yourself from Within is invest in yourself. Invest in your self growth, your self care, self love, and self worth. Yavkrit, you have a hectic schedule trying to balance your acads and your role in the CFI Raftar team. What are some ways you can invest? What are some ways you invest or you can invest in yourself?
What all areas are there which I need to improve upon? I need to accept myself however I am. There might be some parts where I'm not very good at, and where I'm not very good at interacting with people. So I have to see how I can improve upon that. So that time is specifically for that, and this is fixed every day. So apart from my acads and CFI work, this is what I have to do along with that. And you have to accept however you are, with your mistakes, with your faults, your failures. Acceptance is very important for yourself to love yourself, and you have to value your worth. And the more you grow, the more you learn, the more your worth increases. The more you remove your barriers, your insecurities, the more you keep on respecting yourself, the more you keep on valuing yourself.
Yeah, that's correct. In fact, what Yavkrit says is missed out by many. I'll give you one incident where this happened. So I met a colleague who uh, who had some difficulty in terms of bending his hands and so on. He had some arthritic issue. So I asked him what he was doing. So he said, "Okay, I went to a doctor, has prescribed medicine and certain exercises." So how is it going now? It's improving, is what was his answer. But then he also added, saying that I've been getting more and more busy, and therefore I'm not able to devote time for the exercise that he has prescribed. Not knowing that if he did not do those, the busyness that happens would also get affected. Right? This is some mistake that we do all the time. The self care and taking care of our own selves has that value in terms of being able to deliver better is missed out by many of us. And that poses problems in the long run.
Karthik, please share the importance of investing in yourself and any specific practices that you follow.
So I've had the good fortune of some family practices in terms of daily prayers and meditation in the morning, which actually started off mechanically as a child, but I didn't know why I'm doing and all that. But sometimes good habits, when they are there, even if you don't know why you are doing, later you start understanding the meaning with age. So that's something I do early in the morning. Uh, a little later, only towards my middle age, I realized the value of exercising, the importance of exercising, which also Professor Shiva highlighted. Because when we are young, uh, we can afford not to exercise and body will cooperate. It is after a certain stage we realize that flexibility of our body parts, muscles, endurance, etc., they'll start showing up in the other aspects of our day-to-day living. I think over the last 5 to 7 years, I've had the good fortune of being in a fitness group. I won't say I'm doing the very best, but at least I'm very positively influenced by what they do, and at least try to adhere to some walks, jogs, cycling, a bit of stretches. I keep alternating them every other day, so that my body is kept active. There are times that I've missed and I've had its effect seen, but luckily I've been able to lift myself up from those situations, and because of the positive influence, being able to maintain a decent exercise routine. uh, the mental energy today, we are dominated by a world of negative media. I keep repeating that what we consume is not just the food that we need to be conscious of. The other two senses, particularly eyes and ears, uh, they get polluted by a lot of sensationalism, negativity, in all forms of media. Our body and mind are consuming it subconsciously, which results in a not so internal healthy state. So, one of the practices that I consciously do is to, as much as possible, avoid. There are times that I slip into that. Instead, try to cling on to positivity, inspirations. The moment I read, I subscribe myself to a lot of inspiring newsletters and posts. And not only do I just read them, I also make it a point of sharing with a couple of my friends and post it on social media, in the hope that it will similarly uplift them the way it uplifted me. So you create a small circle of influence in the society. Because maintaining the inspiration levels inside high, and being in touch with positive people and events is extremely important in today's world, ever than more than ever before. For a long time in my life, and because of the competitive environment, I used to be not loving my performance achievements. No matter what I did, I never considered myself worthy of self love. Right? I mean, I used to beat myself and not be kind. Over a period of time, both with experiences and with good mentorship, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is learning to be accepting of myself the way I am and being kind to myself. See, we can't be just kind to others if we are not kind to ourselves. The first thing is we need to be kind, accepting, and compassionate to ourselves. Yes, we are imperfect beings. We'll make our mistakes, we'll slip, uh, we'll go wrong, etc., etc. But so be it. We always have an opportunity of lifting ourselves only if we become aware, accept, and are kind to ourselves. If we beat ourselves for the mistakes that we make, it's only going to worsen. And we are as good as anybody else. We are not better, we are not worse, we are as good as anybody else. And the best person to give a love to ourselves is ourselves. There's a beautiful quote that I read. uh, accepting and loving yourselves is the biggest gift. Getting others to love, whether others accept you or not, if they accept you, it's a bonus. But the basic best gift that one can give to oneself is accepting and loving ourselves.
Karthik, well put. Um, One of the key elements that often seen among students is associating failure with themselves, right? They don't, many times they miss out on valuing their own selves, instead associate the failure to themselves, right? Anchoring in that sense is going to make things worse. Instead, you can work on such insecurities, the limiting beliefs that you have, especially self doubt. Am I capable of doing it? Right? Many times this happens, and when you plunge into it, you find out that you're capable of doing. But that self doubt limits you, stops you from moving forward. So it's important to have the self worth and not associate self to whatever that is happening. The event is different, self is different. When we do this, self worth grows.
Lead others to lead themselves. True leaders create more leaders, they do not create followers. Gung Ho is a book written by Ken Blanchard that draws lessons from nature to share insightful and powerful leadership lessons. The squirrel, the beaver, the goose are our sources of inspiration in this simple and easy to read book. Let's find out what the spirit of the squirrel, the way of the beaver, and the gift of the goose are. The spirit of the squirrel. Yavkrit is going to share with us the spirit of the squirrel.
So, over the course of autumn, the squirrels gather nuts and they try to build stores of nuts. They not see it as a hard work because it's something which will be beneficial for them in the future, and it's something which they have to do. So, the nuts which they store, they use it as food for the winter. It is the work which they do, it is worthwhile to them, the time they spend in it, and it is important as well. So, it's not really like they have to do it because they are supposed to do it. It's like they are beneficiating, they are gaining benefits from it as well. And all of the squirrels work towards it. It's not like this work is assigned to one squirrel or something. The group of squirrel work towards it, and they work towards a shared common goal which is going to help all of them in the future, in the winter, uh, to by gathering nuts over the course of the autumn.
Siddharth is going to share an example of how they followed the spirit of the squirrel to make work worthwhile and important in a client project that they did.
The squirrel story teaches us a number of things that directly translates into the workplace. Oftentimes, from experience, what I've noticed is that a lot of teams that we have in the institute, students are unmotivated and they simply lack the motivation to make work worthwhile. So, one of the major key components that the squirrel teaches us is how to make work worthwhile. There are a number of components that makes any sort of work, no matter the position or the hierarchy at which you are doing that work, worthwhile. As someone who leads a team, it is essential that you help team members understand the vision and the big picture. In one of the teams that I am a part of, that I head, it is important that in the very beginning you tell them what exactly is going to be their role, because a lot of it is in the gray area. A lot of times people don't know what they've signed up for, and in the middle they realize that something that they did not sign up for is suddenly put on them. So this was the case at least before I took over. So how their work impacts the world, how social consulting or any form of social work helps other people, other NGOs, other organizations. This is something we have to tell them in the very beginning, how their work impacts the world. So this is something that goes beyond pure business value and profits. This is something that gives you both intrinsic happiness as well as it helps someone else achieve their business value as well. And then increasing someone's intrinsic motivation, self-esteem, all of these is something that occasionally you have to pitch in so that the team does not lose sight of the final goal. And then defining critical goals. There are certain goals that you have to define in the very beginning itself. Like if we take on a client, our goal is to deliver their project no matter how long it extends. Hopefully not beyond a semester, but it should not extend beyond that, because that is the time frame that the client has agreed to and the students have agreed to. Anything beyond would simply, the project would be rendered futile. So students have to know that this is an extremely critical goal that cannot be compromised. Things have to be done on time. And then all the shared goals. Oftentimes when we have projects, students don't know the exact scope of the project, nor do the clients. It is up to the team members, the project leads and the consultants themselves to understand the scope of the problem, ask questions to them, and then take ownership of those ideas. How you would help a company by being in their shoes, how you would ideally brainstorm and help to improve that company's stature in society. That is something that our consultants do. So you don't have to, as a lead of the team, I don't micromanage them. I don't step into their shoes and tell them at each point you have to do this and you have to do that. You let them take responsibility, come up with creative ideas, they discuss with the client, and in most of the times the client is happy with what we come up with, because it is the collective effort of the team's brainstorming. Then at the final level, there are some non-negotiable values that we uphold. As a social consulting organization, matching the unmet needs of society with affordable solutions is something that simply cannot be compromised at any point of our tenure. It doesn't matter if the client is unable to pay. We take it on simply because of the value that they add to society and the value that we believe in that they are doing for society. So values guide all our actions, plans and decisions. And completing the project is a goal. This can sometimes be unmet, or sometimes it can go beyond the time frame. But in case the project is interesting enough and we see enough social value, we will not say no to that, because values cannot be unmet at any given point. That is the whole fundamental value on which our organization stands. So this is how I can translate the spirit of the squirrel to something that I am personally a part of.
The way of the beaver. Beavers build dams. A dam isn't one big log of wood. Beavers use their sharp front teeth to chop a tree and break the log into tinier parts. They then build the dam one twig, one stick, one branch at a time. They also use grass, mud, any vegetation that is available, and rocks. They use the right amount of mud, the right size of twigs or branches, the right size rocks. Basically, they build the dam in the right way. They respect and trust one another and communicate effectively and work together. A beaver knows what to do. It understands the big picture and goes about doing its part one step at a time. Beavers embody the power of action, hard work, technical proficiency, and strong work ethics. The dams that they build are supposed to be like some of the greatest examples of awesome architecture. How does the way of the beaver translate to the workplace? The way of the beaver is to empower team members to play a bigger role, put individual in control of achieving the goal. So how can this be done? This can be done by creating a playing field with clearly marked territory, with clearly defined roles, responsibilities, and rules. Everyone knows what they need to do. So it's also about valuing team members. Listen, understand, and act. Listen actively to the team members, respect their thoughts, feelings, needs, aspirations, and dreams, and act upon them. Align their needs, align their goals, and help them with the project or the organization, and help them see the big picture. Leverage natural skills and abilities of the team members, and at the same time challenge them to stretch beyond their abilities. Now, this is all about shared leadership, shared goals, and collaborative teamwork. One example I would like to share is how we are creating this course. We have students and faculty participating in this course. The overall structure and content for each module is created, and the team gets to choose. Every team player gets to choose what they want to speak on, share what experience they want to share, and how they want to present it. So everyone has their own style. So we try to leverage the natural skills and abilities of each member with clear guidelines that are shared. Every team player takes ownership and responsibility, comes prepared, and presents it in their own way. So, and every team player in this context is valued and respected, and they play to their strengths. Yet, for some of us, some aspects of the whole process are challenging, and we are learning and improvising as we stretch ourselves that extra mile to put in our best. So, it's all about shared leadership, shared goals, shared vision, and collaboration. Tapaswini is going to share the gift of the goose.
Many of us must have seen that usually when birds fly, they fly in a V shape. And the reason why they do this is the bird or the geese which flies in the front uh, has to go through more turbulence and it gets more tired. And when the geese, the leading geese, it flies there, when it flaps its wings, it creates an uplift which will help the other geese which are following to fly with an ease. So these geese will move with a common goal of reaching from one place to another, which is sometimes as far as 5,000 miles. And during this process, it is not easy because they're traveling long distances and they're also flying at speeds of 40 to 70 miles per hour. And in this process, they honk and they encourage the lead bird to keep going and to motivate them so that they don't fall behind during this process. And this is a reminder that no, they remind each other that they're all part of one team and they have a common goal to move from one place to another, no matter how hard it gets. And and they also encourage each other, and they also take turns to lead the team. Like after the leading geese gets tired, it goes back into the V formation, and then the other geese which was flying behind comes ahead and it takes that role. So this will help them to achieve the common goal of which is, in our human terms, it is kind of impossible to think to travel such long distances throughout the day, but they do it with constant encouragement and support.
Tapaswini is going to share the gift of the goose. Aniruddha is going to share his perspective on how the gift of the goose translates to the workplace, the importance of cheering one another, based on his experience from his swimming practices and competitions from inter-IT sports mates.
When you think about cheering, what comes to mind is a stadium full of people cheering others on, but it's a very small part of what it is meant to be. Yeah, it's supposed to instill confidence, boost morale and energy into the team members. The way you go about doing is to appreciate each individual's value and in a timely and responsive manner. It should also be unconditional and enthusiastic. We should not only just congratulate them or support them when they have achieved something, but it should be throughout the journey, throughout the path, so that when they reach milestones and make small achievements, it should encourage them to make bigger achievements. Cheering other on also sustains the enthusiasm of the mission, so it helps to carry on the mission of the team forward, and it's the right work, right way for the right reward. Uh, Withdrawing from the famous Einstein equation E is equal to mc square, the enthusiasm is the result of the mission and the product of cash and congratulations. That's
Colonel, a few words from you on the spirit of the squirrel, the way of the beaver, and the gift of the goose, and the leadership lessons that we have learned.
I would like to compare this session that has just happened involving the beaver, the goose, the geese, and the squirrel, uh, comparing it with a big corporation or any organization for that matter. See, every individual has his own part to play in getting the overall result, the product, which is the end product, that is. And leading others to lead themselves is by itself a very important and a very nice statement, which every professional along his career growth must remember. For instance, an individual who enters any company at the lowest rung, let us say at the floor shop level, he learns how to work on a lathe machine, he becomes an expert, and slowly what happens, he starts moving around, getting to know the other equipments, and then over a period of time he becomes a supervisor. So now what is happening is the amount of involvement that he had, if we take the example of a lampshade, at this level, about say 10 meters high, this chap knows only this much radius of light that is falling upon his area of responsibility. And when he becomes a supervisor, this shade goes a little higher, and this fellow is able to look at 10 people working down below. And therefore, the amount of understanding of the organization's way of working in terms of transferring this knowledge to people who join subsequently, all those things are taken care of in this professional growth that happens within the individual. As a corporation, one of the best practices is for those inductees who come directly at an officer level, at a managerial level, what happens is they are supposed to be knowing what is it that this fellow down below with that 10-meter high shade looks at, visible to him, that is. And therefore, the orientation program that is organized for these people, orientation at the time of induction, involves living with these people at the first rung at the floor. I am talking of some production, manufacturing, engineering company. And therefore, this lead others to lead themselves primarily embodies the statement that every individual should be uh, made to realize how important he is for the organization. And in order to know that, every leader who is inducted at any stage in the hierarchy should know every man's role which is happening. He need not be going and interfering in his job, but he should be able to do the job and understand his job.
The second part of leadership lessons is lead yourself to lead others. You can only lead others as much as you have led yourself. The first leadership lesson under lead yourself to lead others is cultivate a growth mindset. Karthik, you have shared often how a growth mindset is important. Could you share something in context here?
Thanks, Prasanna. I got to know about the growth mindset philosophy much later in my life, into my 30s, about 15 years after my into my corporate life. There have been a couple of instances where I had the awareness, but I'll probably choose, for the sake of consistency and a single story narration, my journey into entrepreneurship, where I got to apply it, or I'm continuing to apply it. So when I started my journey as a game designer, initially I was into board and card game design, and I was using only that as a mechanism to discuss with customers, and I had a belief that that is the best in the world, and digital games have their disadvantage, and they have their overheads and all that. And the limiting belief in me that I cannot design digital games. So several of those actually were going on. So the conversation used to be like, I don't have something and therefore I will not even pursue that opportunity. That's a classic example of a very fixed mindset, right? I will be very limited in my offerings because I only know them. It led to phases where I ended up not even trying to understand problem statements of customers and not having an opportunity to even attempting to solve them because of this limitation. It took a while, and it also resulted in a series of weeks and months without opportunities. And it took quite a bit of mentorship and self-reflection to realize that I was having this limiting belief. And one of the critical moments was when the pandemic struck, where board and card games was really made impossible because people had to social distance and remain in their houses. That's when I was kind of forced to move digital, right? I mean, whatever I was resisting all along, I had to embrace. And there were many like me, but I also had to go through this journey. Now, again, the story started creeping. Will I be able to do? I don't have the resource power. I don't have the expertise and all those stories. And the initial few days, it was more like, how do I convert whatever I did in board and card literally into digital forms? I spent a lot of time exploring, discussing with people, and literally tried converting it. After a point of time, I realized that these two are different worlds, although they had a similarity, but they had their differences. And the other insight that I had was I had to do all alone, right? Everything had to be done by myself was some thing that I had in my mind. That also, I was able to break that barrier. I realized that, okay, one cannot solve all problems alone. One had to partner with the right people who had their expertise. So my expertise was broadly in the game area of games. So the specific expertise which was available in the form of digital game providers was with other people and other companies. So I started exploring them, and this really opened up my mind to the world that was already existing, but I was unaware of. So I moved from a phase of being fixated into a world of possibilities. So it opened me to a plethora of games that could be played under very different conditions, and each had its own benefits too. I started really appreciating the beauty of digital games, not just in the remote world, but in terms of the different kinds of problems they solved, and also got to know a lot of partners who actually provided them in different corporate and educational contexts. So I started partnering with them and started co-providing solutions, and that resulted in really good offerings and end client benefits. So for that, I had to really go through this phase where I was fixated originally, not willing to open up myself. I was too results focused because initially I knew only certain things. I will play to that tune, and I will need immediate results. That was the story that I was operating earlier. I moved to a phase of let me explore, let me partner, let me figure out the solutions together, working with the client, working with the partner. And this is a new journey that I've been embarking on for the last couple of years. And I still am amazed at how much I don't know and how much I continue to discover. But this has been a real breakthrough for me personally. And it is also yielding excellent results because I'm operating in the zone of learning and possibilities rather than pre-fixed outcomes. So it's extremely important to be explorative, to be curious, to open yourselves to what all is possible rather than knowing it all. The knowing it all, I know all mindset is a very limiting mindset. Whereas I'm here to learn, I'm here to put in efforts, and I'm here to explore is the way to be. And this is my story of embracing the growth mindset.
The second leadership lesson under Lead Yourself to Lead Others is manage your time and energy. We lead busy lives, so many things to do, only 24 but only just about 24 hours in a day. Is time management alone enough, or do we need to do something about our energy? Shiva is a very busy man. He has so many things to do. Yet he knows he has found a way to convert his busyness to be-easiness. Shiva, what's your secret to time management? What is your go-to recharge activity?
Thanks, Prasanna, for asking that question. See, I don't manage time. I manage myself. That's the most important thing, because that's the most difficult thing, challenging one. So I try and find out how to manage myself. I know my strengths and weaknesses, what I can do well, what I cannot do well, and therefore managing myself for time is how I look at it. And I'll also touch upon the energy levels. How do I keep up the energy levels? My days are not long, but they are short, because I'm always finding it to be short of time. In that sense, it is. I find it that way. Early on, when I started looking at myself and managing myself for time, uh, there were many things where I would miss out. Sometimes what would happen is, one of those things that I have to do would be nagging my mind. Right? So one tip that I got from someone is, why don't you just put it on paper what you have to do? Right? When I started doing that, I realized the value of it. Not because I have the list and I have to perform. It is because it is somewhere there waiting for me to look at and be able to do. So in that sense, the to-do list made a lot of sense, and till today I keep doing this. There are a lot of apps today, so it's possible to get this done in the way that I want it to happen. We all have, um, what is our, apart from core values, what is it that we definitely need to do? If that is in the top of our mind, it helps us prioritize, right? What is important, what is urgent, have to do right now, or it's something that even if it takes time, I should do it, right? There are things that may be waiting for some time, but may be important for us to complete. So how do we prioritize is also something that goes into managing our own selves. I do this very often. For example, if I have to make sure that I don't forget to do something. For example, day before yesterday, I had to take the file that uh, concerned a particular meeting. So what I did was, I put the by key inside that file, so that it made it easy for me to start that process very easily. The other thing that I do is, if it is a job that is continuing, I sort of break the sentence and leave it at that. Because the next day when I come and let's say I need to start working on my paper, the sentence is incomplete. So the mind automatically feels, oh, okay, this sentence has to be completed. The moment that sentence completion occurs, it becomes easier for me to get into that groove, right? They often say, um, do what you love. But I go with the phrase, love what you do. It helps a lot, because many things are not in your hands. And therefore, it is better that we frame ourselves, train ourselves into love what we are doing. It has greatly helped me when I shift this towards that. Being aware of energy boosters and energy drainers is also important. Sometimes we just stretch ourselves too much, and therefore our body and mind have a capacity, and if we don't understand that capacity, then it's not going to help us in terms of performing throughout the day. So we need to understand when to take a break, how to take a break, right? Many people don't do this, but I do this. My siesta is very important. I wake up early, and if I don't have siesta, then my energy levels go down. I have this uh, energy drainer that happens, and therefore one recharge that I do is to have a fantastic 45-minute siesta. Nobody can disturb me at that time. It helps me a lot in terms of coming back and starting off with full energy. And of course, through the day, if you're able to put it in your journal as to how all your energy levels are changing, it helps you in terms of arranging, number one, the tasks that you have. For example, early in the morning, the energy levels are beautiful. It may be a good idea to use that for certain creative work, right? I meditate in the morning, as Karthik said. I meditate in the morning. If time permits, I have an hour's duration of meditation. Else, I shorten it and make it more effective. And there are many other recharging that are possible. One other thing that I do is I just go for a very short. I'm not going to say walk, but a stroll, back and forth if the space does not permit. The other is to just, because it's important to break the monotony and go to the next. How do you break the monotony? You involve in some other activity. What that activity should be is such that it recharges yourself. Okay, if it is food that recharges you, better to do it. If it is a small amount of let's say coffee that does it, I don't do it. I do it in a different way. Strolling is one of the ways that I do. uh, I also watch something which is a very short video or audio on, let's say if it is music, I just listen to the music for a very short while. It recharges me, and then I go back to that level. The energy level goes up. So that's how I manage my own self for time and the energy levels of mine.
Gary Keller, in his book The One Thing, asks two powerful focusing questions. The first one is, what is a one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything will be easier or unnecessary? What must I do right now to be on the path to getting the big picture one thing? What is the bullseye? Siva, all of us have goals, aspirations, and dreams, and it can become overwhelming at times. What is your one thing, and how does it help you achieve more? I know it sounds counterintuitive. How does the one thing help you achieve more in life?
It's nothing challenging. It helps you in terms of uh, refocus yourself. That one thing for my own personal self is joy. Take anything, for example, whatever you do, you're doing that because eventually you want to connect to joy, right? And therefore, that one thing that I always keep in mind is it connecting to that joy? If it is connecting to the joy, how is it going to connect? And how is it that I'm going to get that done, right? So, all fall in place when you have one thing that you want uh, in life, right? So in this case, I said joy, and therefore all your goals, etc., will get aligned towards that, your aspiration, right? So if you ask me, if every moment of my life is joy, that's what I want. So it becomes an aspiration, right? It's also a dream. When I set a goal, for example, let's say I'm going to read a book and therefore enjoy it, right? when I do that, it leads to another goal automatically. Okay, because there is a content in the book, and the content in the book is going to tell you something which may be valuable to you, and therefore it takes you to another. From one to the other is how goals go. People call it as goal post. uh, when I when all of us actually uh, cracked JE, that was not enough. We had to shift our goal post. But the goals keep shifting. But along the way, instead of waiting for the final moment to happen, if the moment happens every time, it'll be nice. So in a way, I should enjoy having cracked JE, right? And then next, right? Instead of waiting for something to happen. So that's one thing that. So keeping the joy. So I usually put it as enjoy, being with joy. So in that sense, that one thing is helping me a lot in my life. When it does not connect, what do? I go back to the previous one I told you. You love what you do, so automatically the joy connects us. You will be able to achieve the other goal. It's just from my personal perspective that when I did this over and over, it was easier to connect to the goals that I had set. Of course, during life, the course changes here and there. But whatever be the course, the final destination is known to us when we fix our one thing in life. What is that one thing they say, no? That one thing in life.
The fourth leadership lesson under lead yourself to lead others is communicate effectively. Not communicating effectively can lead to misunderstandings, loss of information, rework, and cascading impact on time, energy, and costs.
See, I think everything in life, whether it is personal or professional, begins with communication and ends with communication. Problems, if any, begin with communication sometimes, and every time, all the problems that begin with communication ends with communication, whether it is arbitration or whatever. Uh, Now, as far as this communicating effectively is concerned, I throughout our lives, what I have, at least what I have done on my part was, I realized the importance of vocabulary. So I remember somewhere long ago, of course, I had that 2, 3 books of word building and vocabulary building and things like that. Not just that, I had a 400-page register those days. And every day I used to collect some new words which I did not know. Besides, of course, reading anywhere I read some word which I did not know, I used to look up the dictionary, and even that I used to note down. I think everybody does the same thing. Uh, Except, of course, I don't know, some people do have, by whatever gift they have, they tend to speak better, learn better, and communicate better. So besides having that rich vocabulary, what is important is the communication which is non-verbal in nature. When I say non-verbal in nature, your eyes speaks a lot. You will find olden time movies, eyes used to speak more than words. That is how we used to describe good actors and actresses. And the tone, the tenor in which we communicate matters a lot. That that enables the other fellow to understand in what mood I am, and similarly for me to understand in what mood the other fellow who is communicating is. And as far as listening is concerned, the very listen itself is not hearing. I heard a speech is different. I listened to, I heard. Hearing is something which is very broad brush in nature, and listening is something which is by intent. You are absorbing everything that is being spoken by the speaker, and therefore listening actively makes one not only improve his wisdom learning more, but also in encouraging the speaker to speak more, and thus share the knowledge which is being transferred. Being silent is also a communication, and they say the power of silence is quite enormous. If somebody is silent for a long time, there is a little bit of concern in the community where he is living, in the surroundings. Why is he silent? Because there is something that he is communicating without speaking even a single word. So, power of silence is also there, which we should take into our aspects of working. One another point that I think is important in communication is the college going students, kids, they think speaking fast like Shatabdi Express is good communication. Whereas you find as you grow older and older, you find people slowing down. They slow down. The pause is, they give pauses, the punctuation is used even while speaking, and that makes your communication more effective. So, pause is very important. And therefore, all I can say is in order to be an effective communicator in whichever job you're doing, the first thing is know the job yourself. Second is know what the other fellow is supposed to do. Having known what is your job and the other fellow's job, understand the requirement of both the doer and the instructor to what is to be achieved. Once these three aspects are very clear, then you can list down the points that are to be conveyed and communicate at ease.
Well said, Colonel. You started with talking about how hearing is different from listening. And we can go in the hierarchy of hearing, listening, feeling, and getting immersed in it, in the conversation, in the communication. So, if the hierarchy goes up and up, you feel the communication has served its purpose, it has served its meaning, right? Many times I grew up for words, but over time I found that words are like pearls. If you connect the pearls with nicely, you get a beautiful necklace. So I've seen many of you, including you, Colonel, that you have used the words so nicely, and therefore when you put it into a necklace, and everybody wishes to wear it.
The fifth leadership lesson under Lead Yourself to Lead Others is be emotionally resilient. Emotional intelligence is the ability of a person to understand and handle emotions in oneself and others. So it kind of builds self-awareness, because once you start understanding what you are going through, it becomes much more easier to understand and be empathetic of what others are going through. It is commonly believed that when it comes to job hireability, employers place a premium to EQ over IQ. Karthik, please share how practicing emotional resilience has helped you in the workplace, in your work, and in your life as overall. Karthik, please share how practicing emotional resilience has helped you in the workplace?
Yeah, thanks, Prasanna. Uh, Early in my life, until about college years, I had a very narrow view of the world, and that was formed mainly based on the society I moved in, which valued a lot of IQ or aptitude. Yeah, it gave a lot more importance to what you studied, how much you scored, and your IQ. IQ, essentially the IQ, and that made one believe that that is the most important thing. There weren't any systems or even awareness that there was more to it. Okay, and when things were working, when you are doing well on your own, and there is another main shift that happens, and during your study days you are alone, and your capabilities depend on only on yourself, right? The amount of hard work you put in, and how much you study, etc. But there is a big shift that happens when you shift over to working in teams. Most likely, I would say, I'll use the example of corporates, which is where I went into, but I can broadly extend it to anything, uh, any form of life. It could be even academics. So where you have to work together with others, and because honestly, there's no siloed work, and one realizes that much later in life. Uh, that's when there is much more. Even though emotions existed in the early part of life also, the awareness that emotions have a big bearing on our productivity and others' productivity started dawning much later in life, because there is no one to point that out, or nor did I have the ability to self-reflect. And therefore, also with the fact that you are very charged and want results immediately, you get upset with yourself or with others, you have high expectations of yourself and with others, that results in a varied set of unproductive emotions, be it in the form of worry, anger, frustration, etc., etc. And to some extent, you realize that by being angry, frustrated, upset, you can get on in life. That also is an illusion, because the others start feeling bad for you and they start cooperating. But that's actually the sad part, because one can only go so much with those. The deeper discovery that happens later is that unless one gets to recognize themselves going through these phases, and are accepting and are able to self-lift from these unproductive emotions into a calm and balanced state, that's really when one is productive. And it took a lot of experiences in my life, and also mentorship from good mentors, to recognize these flaws and also correct them. And ever since I started doing that, I could see significantly an alternate way that I'm viewing myself and the team around me, and in terms of the concept of productivity and joy at work itself. So earlier I used to be a very angry person, emotionally upset person. Not that I have mastered completely, but I can definitely say that with time, the intensity of emotion, the duration that the emotion lasts, have significantly reduced. I start looking at, when things go wrong, what else can I do? I start introspecting, are there alternates out? Or can I accept them and try out later, rather than just freaking out on myself or on the people around? And that actually gives a better perspective and helps me come up with more creative ideas. If A doesn't work, there is a good quote. If solution A doesn't work, there are 25 other letters. There are million solutions possible if you are not stuck with one, particularly if you are not getting upset and bound with one solution. we need that calm space in our mind to even think of the other 25 possibilities. And this self awareness is something that is worth developing at an early age. It comes, number one, with self reflection. It comes by seeking mentorship from people who are wiser with age and experience. It also comes with developing some conscious daily habits and practices like meditation, journaling. So a combination of factors helps us become better as a person. And all of these also help me to varying extents as I navigate along life. So a lot of our education is about head. They call it the intelligence or the information, the IQ part of it. But actually learning and effectiveness happens slowly. There is an awareness that there's a significant part is through impact, influence is through the heart, right? Unless we understand each other's mindset, their inner nature, their emotions, we are not able to connect with the audience. So emotions and heart part of it started gaining prominence. And there is a third H apart from the head and heart: action orientation or activity based learning, which is hands. So the three H's help us be productive. So it's not only about the head, it's also about the heart and the hand.
As leaders, if you imagine, people who approach leaders would have not only problems but also want to share.
The sixth leadership lesson under Lead Yourself to Lead Others is embrace change. We talk about change in the teamwork module, managing change in the workplace, and how to lead teams through change. Since change has become such a constant and uncertain in our lives these days, thanks to COVID, it is important to expect change and be prepared for change. Not resist it, but embrace it. Find ways to work through it, embrace the lessons and the insights that we gain, cultivate a growth mindset, build emotional resilience, take care of oneself. All these not only help lead yourself through thick and thin, but also lead others through the most trying changes.
Something that is good that has happened to them, right? So when they come, they may come with this, which is a challenge, or they may come with sharing something that has happened as good. Now, a leader as such has to balance these two because emotionally completely divergent ones, right? One is something that you feel a little drained out, little bad about, and one thing where you have to share the happiness that they have come to share with you. So, in a way, these ups and downs that happen, when you are able to balance that emotion of uh, a happy mood and something that is not so happy, is some trait that is belonging of a leader.
Change is the essence of life. Change is something which we have to, I don't know whether we face it, we manage it, or we let it happen. So it can be anything that is happening with change. Change can be in terms of your own personality, changes in your physique, in the physical sense, changes in your thoughts and minds in terms of the environment in which you grow, the education that you have, and the experiences that you have. So, all these things are, with these things as a background to the change in life, I would, I will now invite Karthik sir to give us an example or his experience in the corporate world, uh, while he was in the corporate world, while he was in various during his study period as a student, and also after leaving the studies, finishing his studies, and this career in the corporate world, he is now on his own, connecting people through games. Over to Karthik.
Like as you rightly said, change is the only constant thing. Let me go back to the study days and the shift to the corporate and touch upon that a little bit. As I said earlier, it is moving from individual work to teamwork. That is the single biggest change that one comes across. The other one is getting along with different kinds of people and personalities, likes, dislikes, as well as habits. So it's actually the teamwork incorporates all of this, and this change is a significant one that most of us undergo. And the other thing is, either in the corporate world, every customer is different. Although we may be claiming that we are experts in one area, or we are serving a particular product or a service, and that's uniform and all that, every customer will have his or her own preferences, or organization may have their own preferences. So that is a change that one has to battle with. The other thing is the teammates that you come across, that will be they'll be constantly changing. Your hierarchy, your immediate boss and the leadership, the top leadership of your department, that would keep changing periodically. And sometimes even the company head. The company head changes either because of natural transitions or because of mergers, acquisitions. There are so many kinds of changes that keep happening constantly, and each one of them has either a direct effect or a ripple effect, indirect effect on one's functioning. Other significant change that I had to undergo was choosing to become an entrepreneur or a freelancer post my corporate. While corporate in itself had several changes that I got oriented to, this shift was even more bigger, because once again I had to be on my own. And for all the challenges that are there in a corporate, the challenges of an entrepreneur are even more, because there's no brand per se, there's no systems per se, there's no HR, there's no finance, you are all in all. And there are no customers. I mean, you have to be your own brand. And the large corporates, they have a certain brand name established with which people are able to associate and connect. Whereas here, you are your own brand. The way you position yourself, not just the service you provide, but you as a person is the first brand. And the support systems again are very limited, and you go through periods of ups and downs in terms of business, as well as the challenges in existing business. And one needs to actually actively keep seeking opportunities, keep networking. One has to fundamentally change and adapt very, very rapidly and continuously as an entrepreneur. So these are some of the very significant changes, and the good news is that while these changes are painful, not just any change is painful, but if we reflect, introspect, and learn the valuable lessons from them, it's the most joyous, and that's what I have always been going through.
The seventh leadership lesson under Lead Yourself to Lead Others is resolve conflict. We talk about how to manage conflict at the workplace in the teamwork module. We also talk about conflict and the different types of conflict and conflict resolution techniques in the conflict management module. In this module, I want to talk about how managing conflicts within oneself helps lead others. Now, what causes conflict within us? Conflict of values, conflict of expectations, conflict in perception and perspectives, conflict between our inner voice of wisdom and our inner chatter, the critical noise that goes on and on. These really clutter our mind and drain tons of energy and time, and many a time make issues and conflict seem bigger than what it is. It is important to resolve internal conflict as and when it rears its head. Resolving conflict within oneself creates space, and when we create that space, it shifts our energy, and what it helps is it builds self-awareness. We are more present, we are more empathetic and understanding of the other person and the situation. And because we have created that space within ourselves, we hold the space for the other person to share. We listen actively. We make the other person feel valued and respected. We are telling them that they are important, and this conveys a powerful message. We empower the other person in the process, where the other person feels a sense of shared leadership and shared ownership in resolving the conflict. We're able to focus, pay attention, listen actively, understand the big picture, get to the root of the matter, promote a healthy dialogue and conversation that helps in finding effective solutions to the issues that we are facing. In this way, we create psychological safety, a safe, non-judgmental space in the workplace. As a result, there is harmony, there's trust, there's reliability at the workplace. Managing internal conflict also helps to delegate effectively and be a collaborative leader at the workplace. Eighth leadership lesson under Lead Yourself to Lead Others is delegate effectively. This is something typically it doesn't come easily to people, delegating and handing over work to others, empowering others to empowering others to do that work, because we tend to do everything ourselves. At least when we start out as a manager or a leader, that's the usual tendency. It's like, hey, can't get this done by them because it's taking time, so let us just do it ourselves. So delegation is just not about picking the right person with the right credentials and capabilities and subject matter expertise. It's also about ensuring that the person is a team player and can lead himself or herself from within. There has to be an alignment of core values, vision, and the big picture. The roles and responsibilities need to be very clearly defined, and the individual needs to be empowered and put in control of their work. The basis for effective delegation is trust, reliability, and commitment, and it goes both ways. And we have spoken about it we have spoken about psychological safety earlier in different contexts, and that is one of the key elements that is necessary for effective delegation to work harmoniously in a workplace. The ninth leadership lesson under Lead Yourself to Lead Others is be a collaborative leader. Collaborative leadership is key to high performance teams and organizations. Given that there's so much specialization and a wide range of subject matter expertise areas in the world, organizations and leaders need to collaborate across teams in the same organization, with partners, with clients, with service providers, spread across functions and locations. Now, empathy, listening skills, open and transparent communication, empowering the individuals are essential to cultivate for a collaborative leader. Shared vision, shared goals, shared leadership goes a long way in ensuring effective collaboration. Again, creating psychological safety is key to creating a collaborative environment. Leveraging collaborative tools and establishing and streamlining processes is also very essential so that teams across locations can collaborate for shared tasks. Sundar Pichai, the Google CEO, is very well known for his collaborative leadership. He is a leader who sits and listens actively and quietly to what everyone else has to say before he shares his own opinions. He empowers them and provides equal opportunity to every member to share and exchange their ideas by creating just the right space and environment. He would then converge on an idea that works for everyone.
So, with that, we come to an end of a very enriching discussion. Hopefully, we got perspectives from Shiva sir, we got from Colonel sir, Prasanna ma'am, and also the TAs. We saw different dimensions of leadership, how leading from within is extremely essential in today's environment. It all starts and ends with self transformation, and how that self transformation ultimately results in impacting and influencing the world around.